Everything that we know and love about Western New York started here. This building has played a pivotal role, and one of the things that we try to do in Discovering Western New York is show you a little bit more about the things that we don't know.
With that said, chasing root sources of any type are my kind of thing here, and you're not going to get many deeper seminal sources in Western New York than the Holland Land Office and the man who truly gave birth to the place we call home, Joseph Ellicott. So Joseph Ellicott was the man put in charge of this whole operation, right?
Yes. He was the surveyor and then made the manager of the office. So he was not only responsible for laying out that 3.25 million acres, but he was responsible for selling it.
So did they give him carte blanche to do pretty much whatever he wanted to with it? You know, like, but it was based on a template that he had in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yes, he had this template based on from Western Pennsylvania Purchase, but he was overseen by other individuals. So he had some freedom in terms of a local concept.
He was loosely supervised.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was supervised by a man named Paolo Busti, who was an Italian banker hired by the land company, and he was based out of Philadelphia, so he might see Busti once a year.
Right, because back then, you know, it's funny, we don't think about supervision, but, you know, back then, I mean, that's tough, because
Yes.
you are, you know, pony rides away.
They would exchange letters
away,
too,
right.
but this is not something that was constant supervision. It was definitely Ellicott was the king of his own little castle here.
Awesome, and he had, so now was the original purchase the entirety of Western New York, the borders that we recognize today? I mean, obviously the lakes, but...
Yes. When we say Western New York, we try to keep it as west of the Genesee River.
Okay. Well, that's a great... Okay. All right. I like that.
Not completely, but that's a very good boundary to picture and say, okay, it is west of the Genesee. That's why it's called Genesee County and the Genesee area, because it was west of the Genesee.
That was the designation, right?
Basically, that was their boundary that they had to work with, that everybody knew.
So now, Ellicott had jurisdiction over this, but they had standardized plots, right?
Well, he's the one that set up the plots.
Oh, he did. So that
Yes.
actual acreage was his idea.
Yes, it was his lotting system.
Okay.
So essentially, the towns were 6 square miles, and then they would put in about 64 lots per township. Although I've never heard it said, the Holland Land Office, to me, is Western New York's very own Ellis Island. And for many back then, the sight of the Holland Land Office must have been the second hopeful visage that they would experience on their journey towards fulfilling their own deeply personal American dream. And Joseph Ellicott was the driven to the point of broken, dedicated visionary architect behind it all. He was American.
Okay.
He was actually born in Bucks County, PA.
Oh, so he was born down in Pennsylvania,
Yes.
and then he somehow got connected with the Holland...
He was born in southern Pennsylvania. The family moved to Maryland.
Okay.
In Ellicott Mills, Maryland was where he was from. But it was his brother that got involved, Andrew, his older brother, into surveying, and actually became heavily involved in early surveying in the United States. He was actually responsible for finishing the layout of Washington, D.C.
Really?
And Joseph...
So what we even see today was based on his early surveying,
least,
like the core.
well, the plans were started by L'Enfant, but he was let go from the project, and it was Ellicott that was brought in to finish and refine it. Okay. And Joseph was his assistant on that project.
I see.
So when surveying came about, or when people were looking for a large surveying project, they looked to the Ellicotts. They really were the first family in American surveying.
Really? So they were they paved the way?
Yeah, and Andrew becomes the Surveyor General for the United States.
Wow.
He's involved in any treaty boundary lines that are laid out. Right. After the War of 1812, it's Andrew who lays out the boundary between the United States and what we know as Canada. Joseph takes on, basically follows in Andrew's footsteps.
Right.
And places like the Holland Land Company are looking for the best.
Right.
They come to the Ellicotts. And they were already, he was based out of Philadelphia. They had an office in Philadelphia, easy to interact with.
Sure.
So,
and we were westward. I mean, we were the western boundary
this
of the
was the
United
western
States at that
frontier,
point. Right,
basically.
Right.
So they sought out Joseph for that, and he did a very good job with Western Pennsylvania. It was a smaller portion, but they were happy with it, so they hired him again.
Awesome. And so hence we have this building. Did he live here?
No.
But this is where all the offices were.
But he lived across the street.
He did. In the house, right? We talked about this, I think, last time, right?
Yes.
You know what I don't like? I don't like that there's tens of thousands of people passing here every day, and maybe even hundreds, and that nobody really knows. Like, this entire region was settled from this very building.
Yes.
It couldn't be more important. You know, everything that they're doing out there and is really based on the work that was done here, the towns that they know, and how it's gridded, and, you know.
Well, we have people come through and they say, oh, I heard of these names before. And I go, well, it all comes back to here. Yeah. And I can say, do you know this? Do you know Ellicott? Well, it's because of here that's everything is named Ellicott and everything. So,
although we've talked about the significance of Clarence to the region in an earlier segment about the Eishelman building in Clarence Center, but here, once again, Clarence will play yet another seminal role in the history of Western New York, as it was also the town that Joseph Ellicott stayed during his initial time here in Western New York.
Yeah, Ellicott settles in the Asa Ransom house, because that was about the only building there when he's there. So for probably about 6 months to a year, he's dealing with that. And then eventually he makes it to Batavia the next year.
So his first year is at Asa Ransom.
Between Buffalo and Clarence, and then eventually moves it
and
out
he's
here.
Doing his work. He's parceling out
Yep.
this acreage in these towns, and then he sets up shop here the following year.
Yes.
Okay, what year was that?
1802.
Okay, so we're still super early. So
yeah, so the grand scheme of things, it's very early on, but we do have to mention that
Sure.
it wasn't the...
So 1802, now this is the building that they came to, or
No. What they did, there was nothing here when he came.
So Batavia wasn't even Batavia.
He founded Batavia.
Okay.
So he built a little log cabin where we're standing. That was the first office. And eventually they made their way to this building in 1815.
Okay.
And this was built to be a permanent building, to be the office. And it was built to, so everything that came through Western New York was coming through.
So that's the Holland Land Office. Honestly, Ryan couldn't have been a better docent of the tour. He's articulate and funny, and I totally get why he's got his job. It was a really great afternoon, and I encourage everyone to stop out. Thanks for visiting. Thanks for discovering Western New York with me.